The new Space Wolf codex has been an absolutely massive upheaval for the faction. We've had loads and loads of the old favourites, the old guard removed, we've had new units added in, and every single datasheet has seen some kind of significant rewrite. So this is a great time to ask ourselves, who's come out on top in this new codex? Now that we've seen them play a little bit, I wanted to take a detachment agnostic look at what the best Space Wolf units are. And with the amazing plethora of datasheets there are available, I had to have a few honourable mentions. So first off, we've got Arjak Rockfist, one of the Terminator characters for Space Wolves. Now, he's very strong and very good at one thing in particular, which is killing character monster vehicles. So Demon Princes, Hive Tyrants, things like that, even some of the new Knight profiles. I think in a certain meta, this guy can be really good. He gives fight on death to your Terminators, and he himself does an absolute buttload of damage to anything that's got those monster, vehicle and character keywords. And 3 damage is a very powerful piece, even just into general heavy infantry kind of profiles. However, his Anvil of Endurance ability gives his unit fight on death on a 4+. A little bit unreliable there. And just generally, I think this guy, rather than being a top 5 unit, he's just a good pick in certain metas where you're seeing a lot of those like monster characters. I also wanted to give a shout out to the Wolf Priest, because what a datasheet. This guy at 70 points, he's basically just a chaplain but with a better secondary ability. He's a chaplain and an apothecary mashed together with kind of the best of both worlds, getting to res models into his unit as well as giving his unit +1 to wound. The +1 to wound's really nice for blood cores, grey hunters, head takers. They all have 10 like lower strength weapons, so the +1 to wound is really impactful for them. If you're not going to have access to lance, having this guy in the unit is really good. And those head takers, potentially 3 wounds with a 4-up invuln, quite a tough model, so being able to resurrect those is no joke, and it can really make an irritating unit for your opponent to have to deal with. And finally, we've got the Wolfguard Battle Leader. What an absolute beast of a datasheet. 65 points for this guy, and he's got an absolute ton of attacks. He's better in melee than most Space Marine captains. He's got a Storm Shield for that invuln. Just really powerful slew of abilities. He gets fight on death on a 2+. He gives his unit sustained hits, and he gives them reroll hit rolls of 1 if the enemy's close to them. This applies in melee and ranged. Just absolutely phenomenal. And these sort of abilities, they really reminded me of someone from earlier in the edition. So the humble Tyrannid Prime here, left power crept in the dust this edition. His fight on death is only on a 4+. He has less attacks of a lesser quality. It just, he gives his unit sustained hits, but doesn't give them any kind of rerolls. Just so sad. His only real use is to give Tyrannid Warriors the Vanguard Invader keyword. Yeah, just such a shame for this guy. I think it really reflects on the Wolfguard Battle Leader how strong he is. I'm only putting him honourable mentions. I think he's absolutely fantastic, but I think he's outclassed by a lot of the other datasheets that are available to Space Wolves. And we can just keep going on and on about different cool units that the Space Wolves have that aren't even their top tier units. Grey Hunters, they dish out about 7 attacks in shooting and melee. They have full rerolls to wound if your opponent's on an objective. An Ando C3, and these guys aren't even considered that good for Space Wolves. We've got Murderfang, a movement 9 dreadnought now. Movement 9, reroll advance, reroll charge. That's nuts when he can get access to advance and charge through Gladius or the White Scars detachment. And then look at his melee profile. Look at that, 8 attacks, hitting on 3s, sustained hits, strength 14 and twin linked. Do you really need all that, mate? Just absolutely nuts. At damage 3 as well, he may not get that infinite fighting gimmick anymore, but he's absolutely fantastic. You've got the Wolfman, there we go, the Wolfman, movement 9, they get built-in hit rerolls with their Thunderhammers, their anti-monster vehicle 3+, flat 3 damage, and like sure, 2 attacks apiece, it's pretty low volume, but these guys are T6 with a 4+ invuln, really difficult for your opponent to deal with, and just missiling out there for 100 points. These guys are a really scary unit, but again, they don't make the top cut. But yeah, without waxing lyrical too much, let's get into the top 5 Space Wolf units. So here at number 5, we've got the Wolfguard Terminators. I think these guys could have been swapped with anyone from the honourable mentions. They're all great units. There's a few reasons in particular I like the Wolfguard Terminators. Number 1, they really enable the other strong Terminator characters that are on this list. You can't really say that Arjak's good without thinking these guys, because he needs them in order to really get the most out of his datasheet. Now, these guys have a fantastic ability and rugged resilience. They don't need a character to be leading them to get that, so they are actually a very, very tough Terminator unit, and at only 170 points, they're really priced competitively against their peers. They have that extra movement of 6, which is valuable. If you're going to be rapid ingressing these guys, which you really should be, it's a very powerful manoeuvre. It just means that you can potentially be a little bit safer and then push up with that movement 6 and just get the charge off that you need to really land a devastating blow on one of your opponent's key units. And they have some great war gear too. The assault cannon with its devastating wounds is nice for clearing chaff. They've got access to storm shields. Absolutely great. 4 wounds is a brilliant break point for all the 3 damage there is out there in the meta. Just makes them way harder to deal with. And the Relic Great Axe is even not a bad option. With dev wounds and flat 3 damage, I can really see an argument for taking that on your leader. So yeah, just a great unit. Got some real powerful rapid ingress threats, and it's just generally a very tough, durable kind of mainstay of the army. Next up at number 4, we've got Ragnar Blackmane. I really like what they did with this guy's datasheet. Aside from his movement of 7, he's basically got the stats of a normal captain, except for in melee, where he has Frostfang. Now this is a crazy weapon on its own. 8 attacks, strength 6, AP 3, really nice, and damage 2. With that sustained hits, this guy will just absolutely chop into any kind of marines and the like, which there are a lot of in the meta between Death Guard, Emperor's Children, World Eaters, other Space Marines. You really got a lot of wheat for him to chop at. Now, he has a great battle lust ability. When he makes a charge move, an extra 2 attacks, taking him up to 10 attacks total. Fairly nuts. But the thing that really makes him is War Howl. Now when he's leading Blood Claws, I really think it's the only way to really get your money's worth out of Blood Claws. That full rerolls to wound that he gives them unconditionally is just absolutely fantastic. However, giving Wolfguard head takers, advance and charge, now that's really nice. I wanted to talk about these guys in the context of Ragnar. Now, only 85 points for these guys means that 3 of them and Ragnar, 175 points. Not a massive investment, it's only a little bit cheaper than those Terminators, and for that you get a unit and a character. They're movement 7 with advance and charge all the time. That is very fast, especially for Marine infantry. And with Ragnar leading them, these guys, if they go into their quarry target that you pick at the start of the turn, you get 18 power sword attacks with dev wounds and precision from these guys. And you also get 10 attacks from Ragnar, which are AP 3, but also benefit from that dev wounds and precision. So you're absolutely going to be able to snipe characters out of any unit, which is becoming increasingly important. You've got your Cryptex and your Wraith blocks, all sorts of things like that. And this unit, just, 3 of them, I've seen my original sort of thought with these guys was, you put the storm shields on them, you get the invuns. And that is great. I think a big unit of these guys with a Wolf Priest is probably pretty good. However, a little 3-man of these guys, all of them with the paired mastercrafted power weapons, it's just a really good volume, especially with the Ragnar giving them that advance and charge. It just makes a fantastic, scary trading piece that you can kind of stage not far out of your deployment zone, somewhere safe, and just be like, look, if you come anywhere within a fairly large area, move 7, advance 3, charge 7, all kind of the averages. Got a big 17-inch threat range, which is the entire mid-board pretty much, that it's just going to get wrecked. Especially if you can give these guys, in Gladius, you give them Lance, they're just going to really take a chunk out of almost anything. And you'd have to be like a Redemptor Dreadnought or something that minuses or halves damage in order to not be scared of these guys. And even then, they've got the volume to kind of threaten those units. I don't know, I just think it's a really effective, efficient and kind of scary piece for you to have access to. At number 3, we've got Bjorn the Fell-Handed. Absolutely great that this guy survived the kind of cull of leaders. I was a little worried for him with his old kit. But this old man's come back with a new lease of life. Movement 9, like Murderfang. Really, really good. And he's lost his half damage, but he's really, really, really like made up for it with other things. So he's a 2 up armor save, toughness 9, 5 up invulnerable save. He's only 8 wounds, but he does have a 5 up feel no pain. So your opponent's got a lot to deal with in terms of killing him. And then he also gets to keep that really cool whenever an attack targets him, while the strength is higher than his toughness, subtract 1 from the wound roll. So things like las cannons are wounding him on 4s, stuff like that. Really, really good. It just keeps these layers of defense and makes him like quite hard to kill, to be honest with you. Not that he's unkillable. He's definitely like, without the half damage, he's definitely a lot more vulnerable than he was before. But you kind of want to use him differently now. I see him more as a backfield kind of piece. It's hard for your opponent to kill because he's always got that 5 up invo and he's got the 5 up feel no pain. Your opponent doesn't know when you're going to spike on those, so they could put something serious into him and just do absolutely no damage to him, or him survive it on 1 wound, and he's just stood there kind of laughing at them. In the meantime, OC3, he farms you a command point every single command phase, an absolutely great ability for a guy like this to sort of guard the back lines, and while he can't necessarily deny deep strike that well, anything that does deep strike in, he's going to mulch. He has a great melee profile, 6 attacks, they hit on 2s, strength 12, 3 damage. Really, really good stats here. And his Hellfrost cannon now, really, really good. The 36-inch range lets him use that 2-up ballistic still to kind of snipe at enemies. It's a flat 5 damage, strength 10, AP 3, That'll genuinely it's a worry for your opponent every time he fires that bad boy up. And if your opponent has little skirmishing units that try and dip into your home field and kind of threaten your objectives, it can also act as a torrent flamer. Strength 6, AP 1, 2 damage. That's quite nice. If you combine that with the heavy flamer that he has as well, he's actually got a very, very reasonable amount of chaff clearing shots. And with OC3, generally like the little OC5 unit drops down and tries to steal your home objective, Bjorn will just kill enough of them that he'll out OC them eventually. So yeah, really, really good. Farming you those command points. 170 points now for him, but I think he's absolutely worth it. At number 2, we've got Logan Grimnar. Fantastic new sculpt for this guy, really imposing Odin-esque Terminator model. It's really, really nice. These 2 wolves kind of prowling around him. And it's given him some great stats to boot. He gets that improved movement of 6, and he's got 8 wounds. Now that's really, really a big break point. Basically 3 damage attacks, you can need 3 of those through to kill him. 2 damage attacks, it's just tanking them all day. Really, really nice. And on top of that, his actual melee profile is very, very impressive. If he goes for his sweeps, between him and his wolves, he has 16 attacks hitting on 2s. Those have all got AP, He'll really shred up any big 20-man blocks of orc boys, guardsmen that are trying to clog up the field with Kriegers. Things like this we've started to see in the meta a little bit. This guy will just really help those Terminators chop through those with sheer volume and stopping just a few of them surviving and clogging you up. And as well as that, his strike profile, 6 attacks, strength 8, damage 3. Really, really good stuff that's really going to amplify the unit that he's in. But while his melee profile and his defensive profile is absolutely worth that 110 points, it's his abilities that really, really crown this guy. So as befitting the old wolf, this guy has a couple of abilities that really, really focus in on outwitting your opponent. Now first off, Cunning of the Wolf. Each time your opponent tries to use a stratagem within 12 of him, increase the CP cost by 1. Really, really good. Basically your opponent might try and set up a big play to kill Logan and his Terminator units. It's going to cost them a lot of command points if they want to buff their units in any meaningful way, which is just a really strong ability generally. However, you can also use this a bit more tactically, perhaps rapid ingressing Logan Grimnar and his unit in behind one of your units that your opponent's about to charge and use some stratagems on. And all of a sudden, when your opponent goes in, they're going to use all their command points up on some stratagems. And when Logan comes to counterpunch, they're not even going to be able to have enough command points left to interrupt. So really, really strong stuff there from Logan. So while that aura is absolutely fantastic for this guy on his gigantic base, that's really, really going to spread that out around your entire army and kind of protect them with that bubble of command point increasing, there is also his Hiking of Fenris ability. This basically is like a drop pod. It lets you bring your units in a battle round early. Now this works for the entire sort of like game. It's not just in battle round 1, which is like the kind of splashy thing. Is battle round 1 you'll be able to bring in Logan and his Terminators, or Arjak and his Terminators, or just a squad of Terminators basically into the midfield. You'll be able to get them behind cover, get them on an objective, and like really sort of like start applying pressure to your opponent early, where you might not necessarily be able to without like very fast units in your Space Wolf army. It's just really, really good. But also don't forget about this ability later on, where you can, if you've got one of your units of like Grey Hunters, Blood Claws, whatever, Wolves in reserves on turn 2, you'll be able to count them as being like a turn later than they are, which means you'll be able to arrive from strategic reserve straight into your opponent's backfield and get maybe some objectives like behind enemy lines and things like that done where you wouldn't usually be able to. So yeah, I really, really like Logan Grimnar. I just think he's a great like versatility piece with like all this great like, you know, tricks that you can play around the Vectora and the Hiking of Fenris. But then also he's a complete like tank and melee beat stick. And he might even help you with completing some of those sagas with his ability to like come into your opponent's deployment zone turn 1 and complete like sagas and things like that. Really, really good stuff. However, all those tricks and like cool finesse plays that you can do, they sometimes don't quite add up to just having a brick that you hurl at your opponent. Thunderwolf Cavalry, 100 points for 3 of these guys. They've got 4 wounds, toughness 6, a 3-up save, a 4-up invuln with their storm shields. Like for 100 points, that is a very, very durable unit. And on top of that, they're now move 12 over move 10. So while these guys can't bust through walls with them being cavalry, they are still just so fast that they can nip around the battlefield. Really, really strong stuff. Now they've lost all their leaders that gave them all these bonuses in melee to actually make them do a lot of damage. However, that's fine because they just have all those bonuses now. Their own weapons got a lot better, AP 2, damage 2, 4 attacks each. Even at strength 5, if you can get access to Lance, which you can from things like Gladius, Stormlance Task Force, things like that, those are great for mounted units. This unit will slam. When it charges, it gets extra damage on all of its Wolfguard weapons, which takes them up to a flat 3 damage. Really, really, really nice. And don't forget, they also get the volume of attacks from the teeth and claws from all their wolves. So yeah, overall, really, really love this guy. They're just like a strong, kind of powerful unit that gets to go out early game. You know, you can position them to just go out and score things like Cleanse and secure no man's land, things like that. And your opponent has to commit something serious to deal with these guys. You know, they're not just going to go down to like a few las cannons and the like. They've got that T6, they've got that 4-up invuln, they're 4 wounds. Really, really tough to deal with. OC2 as well. So these guys are really, really going to be able to like skirmish with your opponent and require real commitment. And you know, 40k is a lot of that trading game. You know, you put something out, your opponent has to try and deal with it, then you get to hit whatever they hit you with. Just, I don't know. I just think that sort of, at the moment, the reason they're number 1 is because they're criminally undercosted. Only 100 points for these guys just feels way too cheap. Like, they're at the same price point as like aggressors, I think. And these guys are just better in every way than them. Just a really, really like effective unit and really, really efficient. You can't really ask for more out of a unit, which is why they're number 1. They're a great scoring trading piece. They're cheap enough to just literally use them to score some points. But as well as that, they're really tough for your opponent to deal with, and they will absolutely hammer most units in close combat. There's nothing that can really just stand there and not worry about at least taking some casualties to the attacks of the Space Wolf Thunderwolf Cavalry. And then, you know, they've got to deal with them. They'll just get in your opponent's face, really clog them up, and let those Wolfguard Terminators, those Grey Hunters, those Blood Claws, the Head Takers, whatever you've got waiting, just to kind of get into position. And your opponent's entire army is fighting like 300 points of Thunderwolf Cavalry and really struggling. That's the dream anyway. So thank you for watching. Just thought I'd make this. It's been one that's been requested, a kind of breakdown of the new Space Wolf units. I really enjoyed looking at them. I'm really impressed by the sort of suite of units that Space Wolves have access to. There's some really good data sheets in there. Personally, I think you always want to be taking Gladius with these guys because it's so good, and the Space Wolf detachments are a little bit finicky. But I still think that some of the Space Wolves detachments are quite good, and I think if you tech into kind of completing those sagas early, you can really get some effective results out of them. But yeah, thanks to Dave for getting me the scans of these data sheets. It really helped with the analysis. And thanks to you guys for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and have a good day.